Welcome to our marketing analysis presentation. My name is Rachel. My team and I are here to present an action plan for your company to propose what specific characteristics service representatives should have for a successful expansion in both Asian and non-Asian countries. Research problem is to determine the importance factors that affects Asian and non-Asian customers' satisfaction towards service representatives. Our broad research questions are: how do values and demographics influence overall satisfactions? How do perceptions of service representatives' attributes influence overall satisfaction with the service? We collected data from 2,471 respondents using a convenience sampling model. The respondents were asked to answer the virtual survey. Data collected responses' demographic, the values, and what their perceptions of service representatives' attributes were. Collected customers' demographics are gender, age, relationship status, employment status, country of origin, reasons, number of people in families, educational qualification. Values were hierarchies and rules are important. Groups are more important than individuals. Men and women work differently. Planning and hard work are important in success. Attributes of service representatives are rudeness, personalization of service, personal human touch, happiness, attentiveness, insincerity, arrogance. In our initial analysis, 641 people out of 2,431 respondents did not answer correctly for the attentiveness questions, which were used to check the reliable their responses. So we had to eliminate those responses during our analysis because we assumed that they might have answered other questions unreliably. Therefore, sample size was redesigned in 1,830 respondents. Also, we recorded the countries of origin into whether respondents were from Asian or non-Asian countries, because this is more meaningful than analyzing data for separate countries. In this way, we can eliminate non-responses and reclassify to focus only on Asian and non-Asian group, which are target reasons for our clients.
Before I explain each of tests that we will use in the report, I'm going to briefly go through mind map. If you look at the slide, in the mind map, it shows all the relevant tests that we'll be using on our report. Firstly, it starts from looking at overall satisfaction, whether overall people satisfied with the service or not. Two components were perception of service representative on each attribute, and the importance of each attribute will then test it with an overall satisfaction to see the relationship between two different components and overall satisfaction. After that, we'll closely look into the importance of each attribute. There might be demographic, values, and country of origin, whether they are Asian or non-Asian. And lastly, 4 scenarios. To examine the overall satisfaction, expecting to answer what kind of service representative the company should hire, we'll be conducting one sample t-test by using the data from a single group of participants. Several assumptions on the t-test will be considered before we deliver the test. It is because accuracy of test interpretation depends on whether assumptions are violated. Scale of measurement. As the data we're dealing with, which is satisfaction level, is interval level of measurement, it doesn't violate the assumption. Independent data or random sample, the data should be independent, that has no relationship between the observations. We will firstly find out general rating from the preference scale from 1 which is strongly disagree, to 7, which is strongly agree. Then, we will set the expected value or test value of 4 to see whether the mean of the population from which the sample is drawn same as the expected value. When the mean of the population is greater than 4, we assume that overall people are satisfied with the service. And when the mean of the population is less than 4, we assume that overall people are not satisfied with the service. It will provide the company with insight on current customer attitude towards their service. But still we wonder, are there any other variables which influence on the level of overall satisfaction? This brings further research question, which is, what were the overall perception of the service representatives or attributes?
Hi, my name is Fiona Li, and I am presenting on our use of both independent t-tests and one-way ANOVAs. Independent t-tests and one-way ANOVAs are both used to compare a scale variable with a categorical variable, that is, a nominal or ordinal variable. The difference is that with an independent t-test, the categorical variable, which is the independent variable, should only contain 2 groups. For example, gender, which is only categorized into male and female, and region of origin, because we've recoded the data and are only looking at whether respondents are from the 2 broad groups of Asian or non-Asian countries and are disregarding the data from respondents who have not responded to the country of origin question. For one-way ANOVAs, the categorical variable should contain more than 2 groups. For example, variables like age, education, or the 4 possible scenarios that respondents were exposed to. In these tests, the scale variable is the dependent variable. For example, the overall satisfaction with the service or the importance placed on the different values, which may change depending on the demographics of the respondent. Using these tests, we can compare the means of the groups within the categorical variable to see which ones are different in relation to the scale variable, and therefore have a meaningful relationship which the managers of our client should take into consideration when hiring service representatives for Asian and non-Asian countries. Using either independent t-tests or one-way ANOVAs, we will test, firstly, the relationship between each of the demographic variables and overall satisfaction. We will especially take note of respondents' region of origin and the effect this has on their level of satisfaction. The managerial implications of this research question are that we can find which groups are most satisfied with the simulated level of service and which groups are the most dissatisfied with this level of service, which would indicate a need to change aspects of the interaction between the service respondent and the customer. We will also be testing the relationship between these demographics and each of the values that respondents were questioned on. Here, we will also pay attention to the region of origin of respondents, because people from different cultural backgrounds will most likely place different levels of importance on each of these values. The managerial implications are that service representatives who are from Asian or non-Asian backgrounds might have completely different expectations of the company culture, and the customers in these different regions might also have different expectations of how the service representatives should deal with them. Finally, respondents were exposed to one of 4 scenarios, so we will test the overall satisfaction with each one of these using a one-way ANOVA test. From these, managers can find out what combination of Asian and non-Asian service representatives and customers is best for making customers feel satisfied, so they can make decisions.
Hi, my name is Soobin Han, and I'll be talking about multi-regression test. We will be using this to analyze the relationship of attribute to overall satisfaction. So, are all the attributes equally important among the respondents? Which attribute is most important to respondents? Some of the attributes collected are whether rudeness of SR, personalization of service, personal human touch, sound of happiness, attentiveness, insincerity of SR, and not being arrogant by SR is important for customer satisfaction with the service. We use multi-regression tests to find whether all the attribute is equally important. If not, which attribute is most important to the respondents. Then we continue to use multi-regression tests to further analyze the importance of attitude differed by the respondent demographic. These analysts will contribute in providing the solution for what kind of service representative to hire for Asian and non-Asian countries. We will especially focus on the demographic variable of country of origin by region to find the most important attribute for Asian and non-Asian. In this way, we can find the attribute they think is the most important for satisfaction of the service provided by the SR. So, when the company hired the service representative, they would use this data to hire what kind of personality they should look for in that person, and also how the company should train them to provide the service with better results of satisfactory. The other demographic analysis tests done will be useful for approaching different segmentation of customers. So, such as in situation of when the importance of attribute is deferred by age group and SI knows the age of the customer, then they will consider the information from the test to have the advantage in satisfying the customer. We use multi-regression tests for finding the relationship of attribute to overall satisfaction because we can find the relationship between several independent variables to one dependent variable. The dependent variable being overall satisfaction with service and independent variables being SR attributes.
I'm Renee, and I will talk about an additional method we will use, conjoint analysis, and mention the limitations of our analysis. Conjoint analysis is a statistical technique used in market research to predict how people value different attributes of a service using multiple level attributes. With this conjoint analysis, we can determine the part worth utility value for each level of each attribute. Large part worth utilities are assigned to the most preferred levels, and small part worth utilities are assigned to the least preferred levels. The attributes with the largest part worth utility range are considered the most important in predicting preference. The results from this conjoint analysis will allow management to determine their budget allocation for each attribute. The results gathered from our analysis will not be interpreted without careful consideration of several limitations. These limitations include survey bias, respondent bias, and the depth of data collected. Survey bias, such as complex wording and format of questions, may affect reliability of data by causing confusion amongst respondents and thus disrupting their understanding. Respondent bias is separated into two categories: inability to answer correctly, which results from language barriers and respondent fatigue, and unwillingness to provide honest answers. Furthermore, our questionnaire did not seek any information regarding respondents' level of income or their familiarity with the telemarketing situation. The absence of this data in our analysis may affect our ability to provide a true representation of respondent preferences and relationships with overall satisfaction in our market analysis. To maintain the thoroughness of analysis, we will also test for the existence of any significant relationships between other variables provided in the data that have not yet been mentioned. The tests and method explained in this presentation will be further analysed once the results have been interpreted and conclusions have been drawn. Our report will assist the company manager in deciding what characteristics to look for when hiring service representatives to deliver services in Asian and non-Asian regions, based on our detailed analysis. Thank you for taking your time to listen to our presentation.